Welcome to the Chapel Thrill Podcast with Hunter Caparelli and JJ Jones.
What is going on, Tar Heel Nation? Welcome to the 7th edition of the Chapel Thrill Pod, your home for all things Carolina basketball. I'm Hunter Caparelli, sideline reporter, studio host, and analyst for ACC Network Extra. Joining me is my co-host, former UNC football wide receiver JJ Jones, as well as two brand new guests on the show, Inside Carolina reporter, podcast host Tommy Ashley, and Inside Carolina senior reporter Greg Barnes. How you guys doing, Tommy and Greg?
Doing well. I mean, Greg's the GOAT, so I'm just here. I'm riding Greg's coattails, so appreciate you having me.
No
Tommy
problem.
runs the show for us, so I just kind of follow along with whatever he says. So I like the fact that Hunter, you, and JJ are kind of running the show tonight. So this makes it easy for me and Tommy.
Totally. We love having you guys on the show. I'm excited.
Absolutely.
So
you lead the way. You and JJ lead the way. Greg and I'll sit back here and and like you said earlier, chop it up. We'll get it going.
Love it. Since we aired our last episode, the Heels flew home from the West Coast after dropping both of those games against Stanford and Cal. They beat Notre Dame convincingly at home. They then traveled to Charlottesville to play the third-place team in the ACC, Virginia Cavaliers, in their only matchup of this season. The Heels won that game going into it as a 6-point underdog, and then they had a week off before heading down to Atlanta before playing Georgia Tech, won that game convincingly as well. So we'll break down those couple matchups, and obviously we'll do an expanded preview of the most vital game of the season for North Carolina, the first of two games of the Tobacco Road Rivalry as ACC preseason freshman of the year. Cam Boozer goes up against our Tar Heel favorite, Caleb Wilson, again in their first of two matchups of the season. So a very highly anticipated head-to-head duel. I know a lot of Duke fans are excited for the game. A lot of UNC fans are excited for the game. So let's get right into it. The Heels are on a 3-game win streak. They just beat Georgia Tech convincingly at home. After watching the last few games, how would you summarize this UNC team right now? Not record-wise, but identity-wise. Tommy, we'll start with you, and we'll work our way around.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you watch them play. Clearly, Carolina has a lot of talent, a lot more talent than they've had in a few years. And you mentioned Caleb Wilson. He's different. And when you have a different player, you got to get him the ball. And they've done a good job of letting him cook the last few weeks. And what I see this Carolina team is, and Greg outlines it with the stats and the metrics and all that, but I see two bigs that are elite, can be elite. And then I see guard play that needs to be more consistent maybe every day. And when they play really well, this is a good basketball team. When they don't defend and when they don't shoot it, they can lose to anybody. And, that's basically every team in college basketball. But for this North Carolina team, I think it's even more so because they've been scoring the basketball a lot lately. And when you score 80 points, 85, 90 points in college, you should win every game you play. But that defense is suspect sometimes. And so, I think they're a consistency away from being really, really good this season.
Totally. Greg, your way. Record-wise, not record-wise, but just identity-wise, where do you think the Heels stand right now?
I think Tommy kind of hit the nail on the head right there. This is a team, in the last 3 games, I think have probably given us a good insight into what type of team they are. Because if you look at Notre Dame, you look at Georgia Tech, neither of those teams have much size inside. Donga for Georgia Tech had a good game on Saturday, but really he's about all they had in the post. Notre Dame was the same way. And as a result, you see Henri Veesaar and you see Caleb Wilson feast. Mm-hmm. And when those two guys are playing at that level and they have size advantages, as long as you get a little bit of production out of your backcourt, you're going to win most games. But if you look at the Virginia game, Henri Veesaar was really taken out of that game. Mm-hmm. And it took 2 elite performances by Jaren Stevenson, who nobody would have expected in the second half, and Derek Dixon playing his best game of the year and making some threes for the team to be able to rally and win that game in an upset. Because the front court, for the most part, was held in check because Virginia has legitimate size. And I think that's the issue moving forward. I mean, if you look at the metrics since January 1st, Carolina has been absolutely elite offensively. They are third nationally in adjusted offensive efficiency. Defensively, they are 202nd nationally. So this is a team that has a bunch of elite bigs. They've got backcourt play that's starting to get a little bit better. I think Tommy's right there. But more than anything, this is a team that is trying to find a defensive identity. And while the offense is clicking, the defense certainly is not.
Totally. JJ, I'll send it your way. Just initial thoughts, impressions of the Heels recently.
Yeah, I know we kind of talked about it last time on the pod, was that West Coast trip being a defining trip for this UNC basketball team. And, kind of like I expected, it didn't go the way we wanted to. But I think these last three stretch of games is kind of what we've expected to see from the Tar Heels the whole season. I mean, a very dominant win at Georgia Tech, and a very narrow escaping win against UVA, a great comeback win. I think these guys they understand I guess the hype that they have right now, and they're going out there and they're playing, they're doing their thing. And, I'm just excited to see how they play tomorrow against Syracuse. And I know everyone's excited for this big game on Saturday against Duke.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. Working off what I mentioned earlier, and anyone in the group could take this one up. What do you think the biggest thing is North Carolina has figured out recently on their 3-game winning streak? And what's the most vital thing they're still searching for? Is it offense? Is it defense? Is it a mix of both?
Go, Greg.
I'll take the easy one. The easy part is that Derek Dixon has stepped up as point guard. And for most of the season, we've seen North Carolina have plenty of success. But there's kind of been that question mark of, okay, like when somebody needs to take control and just kind of calm things down, who can do it? And yes, you have NBA talent in the front court, but you need somebody with the ball in their hands to be able to control the game. And your Kai and Evans just really struggled to do that. And they let Seth Trimble try for a little bit just because he's a veteran. That's just not really his game. And Hubert Davis decided to go ahead and put Derek Dixon into the starting lineup 3 games ago. And I think that's a smart move. And I think we're seeing the effects of that. He just looks more comfortable. He's a good shooter anyway, but he just seems to control the ball better. And there's several games where Kai and Evans, and we saw it against Georgia Tech, where he would have somebody defending him in the front court, and he's got his back to the basket. Yeah. And as a point guard, you cannot do that at the college level and be successful. And Derek Dixon just has a better control of the game. He's running the offense effectively, and he's a reason that this offense is clicking on all cylinders.
I'll chime in and build off that from Greg. We talked about it a lot with Dewey Burke after the Kentucky game, and Dewey was like, you got to ride with Dixon at point guard. He's a freshman. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to look bad at times. But if you do that and you let him play through those, then you'll have something special this time of year. Well, Hubert didn't do that, but he's still pretty good. And Greg's point about Kai and Evans, and JJ knows this as well as anybody. If a coach tells a player to do something that they cannot do, it's not on the player. It's on the coaching staff. And it took Carolina to right now to figure out that Kai and Evans is not a point guard. It's not Kai and Evans' fault. He never was last year. He played with an elite playmaker at Colorado State. And so for him to get off the ball, except for the few minutes he plays, frees him up to be like he's supposed to be when he came to Carolina, and that's a shooter. And I think that point, plus Luka Bogovic's figuring it out, I think has been key. Now, Luka's never met a shot he didn't like, and that can be good or bad. But when he's making them and when he's taking them in the course of the offense, again, this team can be pretty good as long as they don't sacrifice shots for Caleb Wilson and Henri Veesaar to get those guys playing well. Because like Greg said earlier, if you've got Caleb Wilson, you've got Henri Veesaar, and then you've got Trimble sometimes stepping in, throwing in 16, 18, 20 points a game, it's going to be tough to beat unless you're just poor elsewhere. And so Carolina's sort of figuring out, Hubert Davis is figuring it out, that these are my guys. These are the roles they need to be in. And then that creates the identity you want to have. But again, it comes back to defense ultimately for this team.
Totally. JJ, what about you? What do you think? I know Greg has mentioned Dixon. Tommy mentioned Bogovac. Is there another player specifically that you think has quietly become more important to this team over the past few weeks that has led to the team's success?
Honestly, I think it's just those two guys right there in terms of consistency and what we've seen recently. I know Stevenson had a breakout game, but it hasn't been to the point where it's super consistent enough for him to be, I guess, a breakout player for me. I think the most exciting part, though, however, like Tommy and Greg mentioned, is I guess more of an upbeat guard play. I've always been a little bit suspect on how the UNC guards have played. And I mean, like we said, we know what the front court looks like with Veesaar and Wilson. We're just wondering who can be the true one. And I think Coach Hubert Davis finally found that guy in Derek Dixon. And I said early on, I believe that he should have been the starting point guard. It's working out to all ends. And like I said, I think that's just how it is.
During that 4-game stretch when UNC lost 3 of 4 games, dropped games to SMU, Cal, Stanford, it was getting very loud about Hubert Davis's job security. The heat was definitely heating up. The seat was definitely heating up a little bit. I'll toss this to anyone in the group. What have you guys liked most about his in-game adjustments and subbing rotation lately on this 3-game win streak? And where do you still want to see more urgency in Coach Davis's in-game adjustments?
Well, I'll say that what we've seen, really dating back to, I guess, the West Coast trip, is he's shown a willingness to make some changes. We saw a little bit of zone against Cal.
Right.
We saw Jaden Young get in the starting lineup, and I think that's an interesting story because pretty clearly Young starting just to show what type of intensity Hubert wants defensively. Because Jaden's not playing a whole lot, but he is starting both halves to kind of get the message across. And then, of course, with Dixon. So when things were not going well, he was willing to make some changes. Now, I think there are still some changes to be made. We know that he likes switching every screen with this team. He just thinks he has enough talent and athleticism across the board to be able to do that. But now that he's gotten into ACC play, you have a little bit higher level of play across the board for the most part. And you also have, there's a lot of teams that, for one, they'll play you sometimes twice, but also when they're grading film for other teams and scouting for other teams, they're seeing a little bit of Carolina. So just in conference play, you see a lot of opponents more so than you do in non-conference play. And so because of that, I think there's a lot of teams that are starting to pick up on, okay, look, this is something that we can exploit if we have guards or we have players that can do these types of things. That's one of the reasons I think the defense has struggled the way that it has. So I think for one, we've seen a little bit of a willingness to fight over screens, not to the point that I would like to see. But I think just mixing things up defensively with how you're switching screens, how you're fighting over screens, I think that would go a long way in helping this team improve its defensive play.
JJ, what you got?
Appreciate you passing it to me. Honestly, like I would say the best thing about this Hubert adjustment is the fact that we're so used to seeing him have like the Iron 5, Iron 6 guys. And, this season, it's definitely completely different than seasons we've seen before. And I've told Tar Heel fans to not expect seasons we've seen in the past. And I think Hubert understands that he's been on the hot seat. He's at a historic program like North Carolina. He knows that. But like you said, recently, these past few games, he's throwing out lineups that not a lot of people would have thought would have happened. He's playing a lot of guys. I mean, in the Georgia Tech game, he played 10 players. So usually we see that early in the season, but now it's the back half of the season. It's really crunch time, and you see him still not trying to figure out his lineup, but he's trying to give these guys some motivation. Like, look, if you aren't really playing well, I know you've seen me in the past keep those guys in, but now's not the time for that. So he wants the best out of his players that are on the court, and I think that's the best thing and the best adjustments that he's made, especially in the past 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that Hubert's shown it. Look, Hubert had to change because if he kept doing what he was going to do, and it was not going to end well. And that chapter's still not written. But when you putting Jaden Young into the starting lineup, and he played what he played, Greg, like 5 or 10 minutes both games total,
Yep.
it's still a statement to other guys, and like yeah, you want to start, but you're not going to start if you don't do this. That's one thing that has bothered me a little bit watching Hubert Davis coach. He does a lot of good stuff, but he also sometimes, my saying on all these podcasts is you get what you allow. And so if somebody's not playing defense and there's no repercussions for it, you're going to get that. And we saw that. But then I saw Jonathan Powell go out there and take a bad shot, make a bad defensive mistake, and then throw it away, and we never saw him again. So I'm like, you're taking it out on Powell. Set an example for one of the guys that is really good on this team, and we've seen some of that with the starting lineup workout. And to everybody's point, you got to play guys more minutes. Henri Veesaar never played more than 20 minutes, 25 minutes tops at Arizona, and that's a big difference from playing 35 every night. Give credit to that Iron Five in 22. Those dudes balled out, but you saw what happened when somebody got hurt and somebody got concussed at the beginning of the championship game, which happened right in front of us in person. I was like, "Oh, it's over." When Manic got blitzed, and and then they didn't have any other options. So I think what we're seeing here is Hubert be able to have those other options, if not to go in and get you 10, 15 points, at least give you some minutes that work. And y'all mentioned Jaron Stevenson earlier. If Jaron Stevenson did that every night, that answers everything. But you're not going to get that from him every night. So you've got to mix it up. And I think Hubert's done a good job of that. And it was very, very necessary. And for him to not admit openly, but to admit by doing it, that he's willing to make some changes for the better for this team.
Changing gears up a bit, we'll look now towards the future for UNC. They play at home against Syracuse Monday night. I think the only coach in the ACC who's maybe had heard more noise around his job security is Coach Red Autry at a Syracuse game last week at home against Miami. I was there. I heard students in the nosebleeds chanting "Fire Autry." I saw students coming into the Syracuse JMA Wireless Dome with bags over their heads, trash bags over their heads with signs saying "Fire Coach Autry." So, assuming the Heels take care of business at home against the Orange Monday night, we'll preview the Duke game on Saturday. Now, UNC is playing their longtime rival, the Tobacco Road Rivalry. It's the first of two games at the Dean Dome. We'll be playing at the Dean Dome and then at Cameron. It's a monumental matchup for the Heels. John Shire, the head coach for the Duke Blue Devils, he's in his fourth season at the helm of the program after replacing legendary Coach K. I'll say it, even though as a UNC fan, legendary, who coached at the school for over 40 years. Duke has been really good this year. They have one loss. It's a 1 point loss against a good Texas Tech team, and they're coming in looking for blood. So I'll turn it to the guys in the group. When you first turn on this Duke tape, what jumps out immediately as the biggest problem for the Tar Heels? And anyone can take this.
I think the main idea, and I think everybody knows this, is trying to find ways to stop Boozer. I think he's clearly, in my opinion, the number one player in the ACC. Probably he is one of the best freshmen in the country. I'm excited to see this matchup, just like everybody else is, between Boozer and Wilson. Who's the best freshman in the ACC? This Duke team they're solid. They're really good. I mean, I know they're fourth in the country right now. It's going to be a very monumental game, but my biggest thing is being a former athlete, and I know this. When you play in these rivalry games, sometimes it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the emotion of the game. And I think these guys understand that this UNC Duke rivalry is one of the biggest rivalries in the country in all of college sports. And so I think UNC will kind of bring an edge to this game. I don't know what the line is right now set for this game, but I expect it to be really close. I know UNC understands that this is a very monumental game. This has a lot of implications in terms of ACC play, and I think it's gonna be a really good game at the end of the day.
Greg, Tommy.
You want me to get it, Greg?
Go ahead, Tommy.
You can survive 30 from Boozer
Mhm.
if you're Carolina, because he's going to get 20 anyway. He's going to get 20 by accident. You cannot survive 25 from Isaiah Evans. And that's what Carolina has to do. I've talked about this a lot, and some disagree and whatever. You let the star, you don't let, but if the star goes off, unless he's going to put up 40, you can survive that. What you can't have is somebody like Dame Sarr coming out and hitting 15,
Right.
or Humania doing that. And that's
Yeah.
what Carolina's been able to do when they've beaten Duke in these games in the past. It's been a while. I think they lost, what is it? Lost all 3 straight. Anyway, in 22, when they were able to upset Duke, they controlled everybody else and let whoever was the flavor of the day get theirs. And I think for Carolina, it comes down to defense. And JJ mentioned the emotion of the game. We saw that. Was it in 22 or when was it that Carolina came out in the Smith Center and Duke beat the heck out of them right out the gate because
It
they
was
had
in
it was 22 because they had Baycott
22,
on Paulo.
22. They got beaten down in Chapel Hill, and then they went into Cameron a month later, retired Coach K, eventually retired Coach K in the Final Four, but beat Coach K in his final game in Cameron. That was in 22, yeah.
Yep. So you can't come out and let him go nuts early, and it works both ways for both teams. But Duke has always been suspect or subject to athletic guards picking them apart, and Carolina's not really there with this matchup, and that's what's troubling. But you just got to make sure that somebody not named Boozer, the other Boozer can do it, but you cannot let multiple people beyond Cameron Boozer work you, because if you do, you've got no shot, because he's going to get 20, he's going to get 8 or 9 rebounds. He's that good, and he plays old man style of basketball, and that's going to be a tough ask for both Wilson and Veesaar and whoever else they try to put on him. It'll be an interesting matchup. It's going to be a matchup that Carolina's got to be on their A game without question.
100%.
I would add, when you look at this North Carolina team, probably the most surprising thing to me is that they are not a better rebounding team. The entire conversation in the offseason after what we saw last year was, positional length, and they've got to rebound the ball better, and they've got to get taller, and all these things. And when you look at the roster, I mean, I think Hubert hit those benchmarks. I mean, according to Ken Palm, this is the 3rd tallest team in the country. Yet, in terms of defensive rebounding percentage, this team is worse than last year's team, which makes no sense to me. And I bring that up because when you look at the numbers, Duke in ACC play is rebounding 40% of their misses, and they're already 2nd in the league in effective field goal percentage. So they're shooting the ball better than pretty much anybody, and they're rebounding more of the misses than anybody.
Right.
And for me, that's the name of the game. I agree wholeheartedly with what's been said about Boozer. He's going to get his. He's a fantastic player. I think how you try to limit him will be interesting. You don't want to allow Isaiah Evans to get hot, which, if that happens, I think Duke's not impossible to beat, but pretty dang difficult to beat. But if Duke can dominate on the boards, then I just have a hard time seeing North Carolina be able to contend with them.
Outside of the Cam Boozer versus Caleb Wilson matchup, which everyone will obviously be turning into, what's the non-obvious matchup that you think could decide the Duke UNC game? Is it Isaiah Evans versus Seth Trimble? Is there a matchup beyond that people are overlooking that could potentially decide this game Saturday?
I think it's the Evans matchup with whoever
Yeah.
they put on him. And if it's
Right.
me, I'm putting Seth Trimble on him,
Right.
and he's not beating us, because Seth's not going to guard Boozer. I wouldn't try that. But I'd put him on Isaiah Evans. And like I mentioned, and like Greg just said, if Evans hits 3 or 4 or 5 threes, then you're in trouble. If Caleb Foster does that, then you're definitely in trouble. So I think for Carolina is this is a game here that a player like Malik Brown worries me if I'm a Duke guy or if I'm a Carolina guy pulling against Duke, because that guy always seems to make a play that's important. And when he's not out there on this team, I think Duke's very beatable. But when he's out there, he presents trouble. And so anybody, like I said, and it's simple to say, it's not simple to do. Anybody other than Boozer, don't let them beat you. And those matchups, whether it's Seth on Isaiah Evans or, Henri guarding their other big, you just got to be, you got to be engaged fully. And then Caleb Wilson needs to be hot, and he needs to have a lot of shots. And that's
100%.
Carolina's game plan here against Duke.
I've got two actually. One is Caleb Foster, and granted, Caden Boozer's been playing better and playing more of late, versus Dixon. I think that's a matchup where Dixon has been, because he's been playing so well of late. I mean, if he can win that matchup, then that's kind of a steal for North Carolina, because one of my serious questions about Duke coming into the year, much like North Carolina, was can somebody like Caleb Foster, who's been okay, he's been a reserve his entire career, can he step into that lead guard role? And I think he's done a pretty good job of that. But I don't know that he's much better than Dixon at this point of the season. So if Dixon can somehow outperform him and Caden, that would be a win for North Carolina. And then the other is in the post. And I know there's a lot of expectation to see Boozer versus Wilson. I'm curious how much we're actually going to see of that. Because if I was Shire, I'd be putting Malik Brown on Caleb Wilson.
Really?
Malik's a better defender. He's one of the best defenders in the country. He's smart. He's the kind of guy that can frustrate Wilson. And I just think, the idea of Boozer being able to play against Veesaar, Veesaar's long. He's not very strong. I just have a feeling we may see that matchup quite a bit, and how Wilson's able to handle that and deal with a very nuanced defender like Brown will really be telling. I think Malik Brown could really pose some problems if Caleb is not really locked in.
Let me toss in one more, and I'll get out. I don't want to talk too much, but I just noticed it. Boozer has 87 assists on the season for Duke. Nobody else has more than
Cam Boozer.
Yes, big man Boozer.
Big Boozer.
He has 87 assists. Nobody else has more than 61, and that's his brother. You got to stay home on their shooters. And we talk about everybody wanting to have some big matchups. So where's Isaiah Evans from? He's from North Carolina. And so what does he want to be able to do? He wants to come in and get some in the Smith Center against Carolina. You stay home, you guard Boozer straight up. If he goes for 30, as long as he goes for 30 on 15 shots, you're good. If he shoots 15 free throws, you're probably in trouble too. But make everybody else do the work and beat you straight up. And I think to Greg's point, Malik Brown's a difference maker in a game like this. When he's been healthy, they're different and they're very good. The issue is when he's not on the floor. And if you can get Cam Boozer in foul trouble, great, but he doesn't play defense. I mean, I watched the other night, he had one foul in like 35 minutes. He knows how to stay out of the way to not get cheap fouls.
I'll hypothetically fast forward. Let's say North Carolina does win this game. Let's say students get the rush, Franklin Street, all the way from the Dean Dome. Greg, you mentioned offensive rebounding potentially as a quality that UNC has to watch out for. What do they have to do? What would they have done exceptionally well if they had won this game? And anyone could take this.
I would just say they've got to limit the perimeter shooting. Too many of these games that we've seen of late, Carolina has just done a poor job. They're so focused on the no middle defense, where they really want to prevent people from getting into the paint, that they're leaving too many shooters open. I mean, if you go back to the Florida State game, if Florida State had anybody that can make shots, they could have had a field day from deep, because those guys were wide open.
Right.
Carolina has done a better job of late. But as Tommy said, the ability for Boozer to look for open perimeter shots, because he is going to get doubled, that poses a problem. So if Carolina does a much better job on the perimeter and they don't get torched from deep, I think they'll be in a position to win this game.
Jay, do you want to hop in?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I mean, like we just said earlier, not letting Isaiah Evans really, really run this game. I know we said that Cam Boozer, he's going to have his night. He's going to have 20, 25. Like Tommy said, let the star be the star. But at the end of the day, it's those role guys who you don't want coming off the bench, giving UNC 15, 20, stuff like that. And then like Greg also said, limiting the 3-point shooting. I know Isaiah Evans, they call him Slim because he can knock down shots as well. So it's going to be really hard for them to um, guard that. But at the end of the day, if they can continue to do that, if they can stop Big Boozer as well, I think they come out with the win. But at the end of the day, I'm a realist. It's going to be really hard for these guys to beat the Blue Devils. But if they win, they win. So.
Hunter, I want to add, Carolina is allowing their ACC opponents to shoot 42% from three. That's obviously dead last in the ACC.
So that can't happen if you want to win ball games.
100%. As we
And
kind
that's
of
on a
wrap
lot.
things.
That's on a lot of shots too.
Right.
That's not like on like they shot 4 for 10. That's on like 15 for 40. And so Carolina, we all know Duke's going to shoot the three ball, and Isaiah Evans shoots 33%, 34% on the season. You got to, if he's going to make them, he's got to take a bunch of them. But Carolina cannot let them get hot from deep, because then you have to pick your poison, and it's not a good pathway for Carolina.
A thought I'll add in here. I feel like a theme throughout this season for UNC has been in their big wins. They always had one guy step up outside of Caleb Wilson or Henri Veesaar. It ended up being called either the Derek Dixon game when they beat Kentucky on the road. When it was Virginia, it was the Jaron Stevenson game. With Luka Bogovac playing better, shooting it more over the past couple games, shooting it more efficiently, I predict if UNC does win this game, it could end up being called the Luka Bogovac game because he would have hit 4 or 5 threes, scored maybe close to 20 points, and it'll be known as the Luka Bogovac game. Just like how a bunch of their bigger wins throughout the season, a role player has stepped up and played well. But as we wrap things up, a couple more questions for the room. For the Duke game, do we think this is more of a resume game for UNC or a reality check game or both?
I think that's a good question. And I would say the fact that Carolina is 4-3 in Q1 games
Mhm.
means this is not really a resume game necessarily. Certainly it would help both in the ACC standings and with seeding. But Carolina's proven that when they play well, they can play with anybody. The last couple of years, 23 and 25, Carolina had one Q1 win. So the question
Right.
always was, are they that good? I think this team has potential to be really good. But I do think it's really more of a kind of a heat check because people you saw the upset at Virginia, which was desperately needed. And they said, okay, well, maybe they've turned the corner. Well, have they? Right? I think that's the question. I don't think this Duke team is as good as last year's team by any stretch. I think they're solid. I think they play really good defense. I don't think they're one of the top 5 teams in the country. And I think with this being at home, this is an opportunity for UNC to really say, look, the Virginia game was legit. We can play with Duke. We can beat Duke. We may not be able to win the ACC because we dug ourselves too big of a hole, but we're going to be a contender, and we're going to be able to challenge for a pretty good seed in the NCAA tournament. I think that's what this game is about.
I agree with Greg. I mean, I think for Carolina, and look, I don't want people to listen to this and say them dudes are hating on Carolina. They don't think Carolina has a shot against Duke. They absolutely can beat Duke. A lot needs to go right, but I think the heat check is a great point. Carolina's played, Greg, what's the number? They've played the what schedule, strength of what schedule so far? They've played the worst schedule in the ACC just about to this point.
14th right now in the ACC.
Yeah, and it changes significantly after Monday night against Syracuse. And so for Carolina, you want to protect the home court and you want to do all this, and you want to see how good you are. Now, you can lose and be really good, but you cannot not show up. And I think for me, watching this game is how they play it. Are they fully engaged defensively? I do not see how this team has been so poor defensively, given, like Greg said earlier, they've got athletes, they've got players, they got ballers on this team that can play, and they've just been bad on defense at times. So I think for me, that's what you carry forward. Win or lose, you carry forward how you play. There are no moral victories, no, but you can carry forward a solid performance into everybody not named Duke and get it rolling a little bit, because there's definitely winnable games after this, but there's also losable games after that. And this Carolina team needs to figure out how not be that team that can win or lose any game they play. And I think Duke's going to show a lot, regardless of what the final scoreboard says.
JJ?
Yeah, we've seen the highs and the lows of this basketball team this season, and I think this is definitely like not a resume builder, definitely a reality check kind of game. Throw all the stats out the window. Like I said earlier, this is more of an emotional game. Can you go in? Can you stay at home, defend your home court, and beat the team up the road? And this is, I mean, the number 4 team in the nation. I know Greg said earlier he doesn't believe they're the number 4 team. I don't blame him. I think they're a good team. I don't think they are a top 5 team in the country, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, we've seen some of these losses, we've seen some of these wins, but I think this is one of those games where it's like, okay, can UNC not just beat their rival, but beat a top 5 team and continue to be consistent? Because this will be if they win that game, that'll be a 5-game win streak, 4 or 5-game win streak, and that's exactly what this team needs, to show everybody in the nation that this is a legit team. And I think that they have the guys. Like Tommy said, they have guys to play defense. They have the athletes. Now, can they go out there and in a big time game that it's not just a resume game, it's an emotional, close to home game? How do you go out there, defend your home court, and prove to everybody that they're wrong?
I'll throw in one last question for the group before we wrap things up. You can provide your final thoughts. What's one thing UNC must do if they're going to beat Duke?
I'll go with this one. I think you just have to, like I said, I think it's just emotional. You have to want it more. In these games, you just have to want it more. And I know you said earlier with a role player like Luka coming out and being a breakout kind of guy, it kind of reminds me of, I know Cormac Ryan wasn't like I said, a comeback kind of guy, but he made a lot of big shots in that game whenever they played Duke, and it ended up being Duke at Cameron Indoor. I see that kind of being like a Seth Trimble. I think he kind of is the guy for me who comes out, plays great defense, and also makes plays on the offense side of the ball, just because I know that this Duke team is not looking to Seth as being an offensive threat. And Seth has been a part of some really good Duke games and some really bad Duke games. So I think he's going to take this one personal in his senior year, go out there and make a lot of plays for this team. I know Wilson's going to do him as usual, and Seth's going to be the comeback guy. And I'm excited to see of either Stevenson, Dixon, Powell, Luka, who else comes in and also just contributes as well.
For me, and I'll let Greg wrap it up, so I'll go ahead and go. For me, Henri Veesaar is on the floor at the end of the game, and they're close in the rebounding. The numbers are insane for this team, the difference when Veesaar is on the court and off the court. I mean, it is ridiculous. Everybody talks about Caleb Wilson. Greg, I'm sure you've got him and you know him. Veesaar on the court, this team is so much better than they are when he's off the court. And I think for him to be on the court when the game's over or when the game's ending, and Carolina has rebounded pretty much equally with Duke on both ends, I think Carolina would be in very good. Every Carolina fan should take that right now if that was an option to pick something with Veesaar and the rebounding.
Yeah, I don't have that number right in front of me, but Tommy's exactly right. I mean, it's ridiculous, the amount of efficiency differential when Veesaar is on the floor. And I'm going to say Veesaar as well, but for a little bit different reason. And if you watched him against Notre Dame, if you watched him against Georgia Tech, he was elite. And the reason he was elite was because he was playing against guys that he had a significant size advantage against. When he plays against guys that are similar to him in build, whether it's Michigan State, we saw it against Virginia, he tends to kind of get lost because he's not the big, strong guy. He just uses his length and height very well. I think he needs to be a factor in this game. We know Caleb Wilson is going to do what Caleb Wilson does. I have no doubt that he's going to show up, like Boozer will show up. But if Veesaar is not a storyline in this game, that doesn't mean he has to be 25 and 12, but he's got to be a key factor. He's got to hold his own in the front court. And if that happens, and if Carolina can at least play equal in the front court, then they have a chance in this game. But if Wilson's really the only guy performing in the front court, then that's your advantage to Duke, and that's going to be tough for Carolina to win. So we talk about Veesaar being an NBA first-round draft pick type of guy, and I think the potential is there for that to happen. He needs to play like that in some of these big games coming up, and there's probably no bigger game at home for North Carolina than Duke, especially to start this final month of the season.
Hunter, for the record,
Yeah.
Veesaar, when Carolina, the plus minus, which is hit or miss, Greg's right, the efficiency numbers are more important.
Totally.
Plus 298 when Veesaar is on the court. Only 203 when Wilson's on the court. So almost 100-point difference in the plus minus when Veesaar is on the court. And then the efficiency numbers, to Greg's point, are worse than that or bigger gaps than that. So very important that he, as Greg said, he's a storyline here on, I guess, next Saturday night.
That's why you go out in the transfer portal and get a 7-foot center. That's exactly why. Well, that was all great insight from everyone. That's going to do it for the 7th episode, the Chapel Thrill Pod. I want to thank Tommy Ashley and Greg Barnes again for joining the show. We'll be back to provide our instant thoughts and opinions on UNC's performance against Duke and what feels like the most hype matchup between the Tobacco Road rivals in a few years. I know the Dean Dome's going to be rocking. It's going to be a hostile environment for Duke. Word has it the theme for the game is a blue-white stripe out, which I haven't seen in the Dean Dome in a while. They did a white out for the Kansas game, so I'm excited to see how the blue-white stripes look. And in honor of it being Duke Week, I'm actually wearing, as you could potentially see from my camera, my Coach K funeral shirt from 2022 when UNC defeated Duke at Cameron, Coach K's final home game, and then in the Final Four to retire Coach K. So hoping this sweatshirt could bring a little good luck for the Heels. For JJ Jones, I'm Hunter Caparelli. As always, go Heels.
Go Heels.